In the last few years, how often have you heard of semiconductor chips? We bet that you would have come across the word semiconductor quite frequently. That's because semiconductor chips run everything, whether it's the phone in your pocket, the car you drive, or satellites circling the Earth. Today, we will talk about a giant corporation that changed computing during its early days and continues to be a mover and shaker in the semiconductor market today. A company that is valued at around $200 billion and employs 130,000 people. Intel is truly one of the companies that has defined the way modern society lives. So let's dive into the video and understand the Intel story. Intel was founded in the year 1968 by two employees of Fairchild Semiconductors. Within a couple of years of its existence, Intel was going to revolutionize computing. The computing world of the 1960s was very different from what it is today. The cost of computing was high, and the uses of a computer were limited. The smallest computer systems were the size of a refrigerator back then. In a nutshell, personal computing was a thing unheard of. Fun fact, renting computers for office use in the 1960s could cost up to $2,500 a month. These facts seem unthinkable today, given how accessible computers are. Many companies played a role in advancing computing, but what role did Intel play? Without getting too technical, what Intel did was figure out how to build a single chip that could perform multiple functions. Essentially, a chip was designed that could be reprogrammed to perform different functions, eliminating the need for a single chip function model. This chip became the world's first commercially available microprocessor in 1971. Once this new chip design was mass-produced, the size and cost of computers came down drastically. Remember the office computer we mentioned earlier that cost $2,500 a month to rent? Intel's new chip 4004 performed the same functions and cost $60. By 1992, 24 years after incorporation, Intel commanded 83% market share in the PC market and managed to earn $1 billion a year. How did they manage to get there? Despite the developments Intel made in the microprocessor market, it was the design and manufacture of memory devices that was Intel's core business through the 70s. Starting from the mid-70s, there was going to be a major shift in the direction of computer manufacturers. Many companies like Apple, Atari, and Commodore began to focus on personal computing. Other giants like IBM and Compaq would soon join in. These personal computers required microprocessors to function, and Intel was well positioned to win their business. Another added motivation for Intel to invest in the microprocessor business was the increasingly competitive memory business. The entry of multiple new players into this market had a detrimental effect on the costs and profits Intel could generate. Because of Intel's dependence on the memory market, their financial health was not ideal in the late 70s and early 80s. In 1981, IBM launched its personal computer. At this point, IBM was the biggest name in computing, and it had decided to use Intel's microprocessor for the computer. The significance of this partnership was such that Intel decided to change the core focus of its business. Intel's core business would now be microprocessors. But switching the core business for any company is a major undertaking. Intel had to invest in research and development and hire more individuals who could help them change direction. Usually, an overhaul for major companies takes 3 to 5 years to show positive results. Luckily for Intel, their primary customer also became a shareholder. IBM bought a stake in Intel, establishing a mutually beneficial partnership that lasted a few years. The changes IBM made to its business from 1980 to 1990 set it up for years of sheer market dominance. It wasn't just this shift that was a bold decision. In October of 1985, Intel launched the Intel 386 chip series. This microprocessor was the fastest, most advanced chipset out there. Once Intel had developed this, they refused to license the chip design and architecture to any other manufacturers. This seems quite reasonable, right? Well, it wasn't the norm. You see, most users of microprocessors wanted an assured secondary supplier for the microprocessor they purchased. In simple words, what it meant was that if you are IBM and you want to buy a microprocessor for your PC, you would not agree on a deal with Intel unless they signed an agreement stating that you could purchase the same chipset from another manufacturer like AMD or Motorola in case of defects or shortfalls. To facilitate this, Intel would have to license all of its chip design and architecture to other Japanese manufacturers like Toshiba or Fujitsu, or American manufacturers like AMD. This is a huge setback for any company that has spent billions of dollars on research only to share the knowledge acquired. For the Intel 386 microprocessors, Intel refused to share any information. This led to two major outcomes. Firstly, AMD filed a breach of agreement lawsuit against Intel. We will not focus on this as it was a minor part of the story. The second outcome was IBM's refusal to use the 386 microprocessor without any assured secondary supplier. IBM did not budge from their decision, but neither did Intel. They formed a partnership with Compaq and Microsoft to create the Desk Pro 386, a highly successful personal computer. The Desk Pro 386 was launched in 1986, and with its success, two things were proven beyond doubt. The first was that Intel microprocessors were the best in the market. The second was that IBM or no IBM, Intel was going to thrive. This is how Intel became the market leader by 1992. In fact, the 90s was a period dominated by the Wintel partnership. Do you know what Wintel stands for? Windows and Intel. By this point, consumers believed that every good computer was powered by an Intel microprocessor and operated on the Windows operating system. That's how dominant they were. In 1993, Intel launched the Pentium series of microprocessors. Similar to the 386 series, the Pentium series was well received, and the successive Pentium models continued Intel's successful journey into the new millennium. During the 90s, Intel also came up with a marketing campaign which I believe is one of the most recognizable campaigns in the world. Let me ask you a question. Do you remember an ad that showed the Intel logo and the soundbite that went along with it? If you are my age or older, you probably do. Intel promised computer companies that they would share the marketing costs if the computer companies featured Intel in their marketing material. This marketing strategy made Intel so popular that consumers went to the store and asked if the computer had Intel inside. A stroke of genius from the Intel team. But all has not been rosy for Intel since the 2000s. To start with, Intel was hit by the financial crisis of 1998. Although the effect was short-term, the period during which this happened resulted in little to no developments. This set the company back by 2 to 3 years. Here is a question for you. There is an extremely popular device microprocessor segment from which Intel is completely absent. Do you know which one? The cell phone chip market. Amongst its long list of successes, Intel has never been able to include the cell phone microprocessor. The truth is that Intel tried to make this market successful over a decade and a half, but for one reason or another, has not been able to match up to industry requirements. In the process, they have lost over $10 billion. An interesting part of Intel's business structure is that it is one of the only giant chip companies that owns its own chip manufacturing unit. This is an advantage and a disadvantage. Because Intel designs and manufactures its microprocessors, it has to ensure that every detail is perfect. They do not have the liberty to delegate any responsibility. Their setup also means that there is less flexibility. They have to go all in with every design and purchase their own machines, making it an expensive outlay. This vertical integration is not all bad though. The advantage that Intel now seems to have because of this setup is that as the onus on companies increases to manufacture in the United States, Intel will be ahead of its competitors. Its units are ready and operational. Over the last 2 decades, Intel tried to maintain its market leadership through aggressive developments, but as it turned out, these goals were not realistic. Intel even had to face a 7-year delay on a scheduled launch because they had set themselves unrealistic timelines. What this delay did was open the gates for their rivals to come up with better products. Today, AMD's microprocessors cost less and perform better than Intel's. The past 2 decades have been difficult for Intel, but Intel continues to remain the market leader. The future for Intel will consist of some tough decisions like they took in the 1980s. Intel has been a game changer, a company that has truly affected our daily lives. But what stands out is Intel's ability to stay relevant for over 5 decades. Like any big corporation that has stayed in business for as long as Intel has gone through its fair share of issues. Currently, Intel is going through a phase of depleted customer trust. Many of its traditional customers are now designing their own chips. What the future holds for Intel, we will have to see. What do you think the future holds for Intel? Is it time for a pivotal shift like the one in the 80s? Should Intel start outsourcing its chip manufacturing? Or do you think that there is a certain product department that Intel is not focused on enough, like headset chips or a new generation cell phone chip? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. We love hearing from you. That's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. Please don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel for more interesting content on some of your favorite companies. Also, hit that bell icon so that you're notified every time we drop a fresh video. See you next time.